All right. Thank you very much, Kevin. Look, in sticking with the activist strategy, we've taken an investment here recently in Timberline Resources. Timberline is a Nevada-focused exploration company. Timberline has been around for a while. It's gone through several iterations, but at this point, they are focused by and large on their assets in Eureka, Nevada, which is really a forgotten corner in my view of a part of Nevada, part of a major gold trend, simply hasn't seen adequate exploration over the past few years. So I'm going to start by saying there's been some changes. Look, there's a cautionary statement. I am a director, for full disclosure. I became a director very recently. We have brought on a new CEO as of today. These cautionary statements are part of the presentation on the corporate website, so I'd urge you to visit it, read this at your leisure. Go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so the current capital structure, you can see, is 112 million shares out with options, warrants. We've got about 193. Director and management actually have a very, very big position in this company. It's a good thing to see in my view. There's some long-term shareholders that have really stuck with this company and have full belief in the assets, in particular this Eureka project that I'm going to talk about. So I like to see that in the company. With Crescat in there, we have a very large stake now, nearly 15%. Market cap at present, based on current trading, is about 37.5 million Canadian. All right, go to the next slide, please. Before I get started here, I'm going to talk about the transitions that have been made inside the company over the past month or so. Look, the company has a huge skill set, or brain base, basically. You have a lot of very high-powered geologists involved in the company. And what was, in my view, what was happening prior to today was you had certain people whose skill sets weren't being utilized as much as they probably should. So, for example, Steve Osterberg, who's the geologist, who oversees the company, he should be working on the projects and focus like a laser on making these things go. He and his brother Mark Osterberg, fantastic geologists, can't say enough good things about them. And it's really comforting to see them being able to allocate much more of their attention to the assets. Now, what we've done here in the just today is announced addition of a CEO named Patrick Highsmith. Patrick and I worked together at Newmont about 12, 15 years ago. And like myself, Patrick decided to get into the junior mining sector. He's been part of a number of companies, but he's more of a corporate side person who can handle a lot of the things that simply weren't able to be addressed prior to. So I think the new combination of management and the new structure and reallocating people's positions to where their strengths are, I think is going to benefit the company hugely. Now, as I do with all presentations, I'm going to kind of give you a high-level picture, and then we'll zoom into the geology, and then I'm going to be very focused about what the prize is here. This is the excitement of junior mining and investing, is finding those multi-million-ounce discoveries. And as Kevin said, there's been a dearth of these things. I mean, there's truly been a shocking dearth of gold discovery in the past few years. One thing I would point out about Kevin's chart, even though it's not in front of us right now, is that there was a lot of money that came into the sector in the period between, say, 2007 and 2011. And even though that money came into the sector, we did not see a commensurate rise in discovery, which says something. Now, I think by and large, there was a huge misallocation of capital by exploration companies during that time. And I saw a lot of companies go back, use money to drill projects that had been around for many years, spend money on things that really didn't generate value. I have a strong belief that one should not do that. I think new ideas, new models, new targets need to be developed in these companies. And this is a classic case that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the Eureka district, which is, as you can see here in this image, Timberline has a commanding position in this area in the south part of the Battle Mountain Trend near the town of Eureka. Okay, that claim map on the right-hand side, you can see covers a very large area. Basically, this is a district scale project. And inside of that, they already have a number of deposits. We'll talk about those more in a minute. But what's really intriguing about this part of the Battle Mountain Trend, this area has not seen a comprehensive, diligent exploration program in modern time. The last major discovery was of Ruby Hill and Archimedes, which was actually in the 1990s. So we're talking like a 25-year gap in serious exploration. Now, Ruby Hill and Archimedes made good mines. Homestake mined them at first, and then Barrick, of course, when they acquired Homestake, continued mining there. I believe Waterton now owns those assets. But this area, other than that, has not seen systematic exploration, in my view. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to talk about the district scale or the property scale prize here at first. The corridor of blue and red rocks you see there, look, these are sedimentary rocks, and they happen to have a lot of limestone involved and stuff like that. But what they are is a good host for classic Carlin type mineralization. This is the style of mineralization that's made Nevada so famous as a gold district. Okay, Carlin type deposits have produced huge amounts of gold over the past, say, 40, 50 years since the first discovery. Look, these things were actually found in the early 1900s. Didn't quite understand what they were, but when John Livermore found the Carlin deposit north of the town of Carlin, the whole model and the whole notion around exploring for these things really took off. Okay, so it's probably a 5-6 decade long history of looking for these things, you know, a dedicated focus on looking for Carlin deposits. But does it mean all have been found? No. This is a great example of where you have great potential for further discovery. This corridor of blue and red, these happen to be rocks that are very favorable for Carlin type deposits. They happen to be what we call Cambrian in age. They're a bit older than the typical host rocks, say up on the Carlin Trend and elsewhere in the this Battle Mountain Cortez Trend. But they are very good hosts. They host Archimedes and Ruby Hill here in Eureka. All right, so let's go to the next slide.
Hey, Quinton, just real quick, weren't some of these Carlin-style deposits key really to Newmont's entire success, or a big part of it?
Absolutely. Look, when John Livermore, John was an unbelievable geologist. He worked at the gold standard mine out by Lovelock. This is way back in the early 1900s, 1920s, I believe. And as a young geologist, he recognized that this was a unique style of gold mineralization. These limestone hosted, muddy limestone hosted, what we call no-seum or micron gold deposits. So he convinced Newmont, this is in the early 1960s, in fact, 1961, to spend money to look for these things. I mean, think about it. The price of gold was, what, $42 an ounce at that time. Newmont backed his exploration efforts, and he identified an area north of the town of Carlin that became the Carlin mine. The first sampling he did of outcrops out there, he recognized this decalcification, these other aspects associated with these, and he was getting half-ounce grade on surface. It was a remarkable discovery. Carlin mine ended up being, I think, around 3 million ounces. But that then grew and grew and grew as they explored more of the Carlin Trend over time, and really it unraveled over decades. Okay, you look at the discoveries, Gold Quarry, then you go up to the north to Gold Strike. It was found in 1987. I mean, these districts unfold over time, but it was really that initial discovery, and it is what made Newmont into the gold company it is today. Correct.
The largest market cap gold company in the industry, in the world, right?
Yes, and now, of course, they're in joint venture in Nevada with Barrick. You've got, now a collaboration between the two.
I see some similarities between him and you, Quinton, with Kirkland.
All right, so here we got a little bit of what we call stratigraphic section. This is basically a schematic image showing you the stack or the layers of rock that we find on the property. And I've highlighted two in particular. Look, the Dunderberg Shale and this unit called the Secret Canyon Formation are both ideal hosts for Carlin type deposits. They're what we call dirty limestones. They're kind of shaly, kind of muddy, and they have calcite, which is what the lime component is. All right, now look, there's a bit of debate about which unit is hosting the mineralization on the property, and I'm not looking to start a debate here. I just want to let people know that there are two very thick units. In the case of Dunderberg, 265 foot thick, and then in the case of Secret Canyon, you have two subunits, each are hundreds of feet thick. Okay, these rocks are what you need to host a big Carlin deposit. We find nice thick sections on the property. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. All right, what else do we know? Well, look, this is prior to Timberline's arrival, but a soil program. This is collecting, soil samples from across the property in a gridded pattern. The soils revealed strong trends in gold anomalism. In particular, there's three trends here. You can see three, north-northwest trending trends. So you got Lookout Mountain, Oswego, and the Windfall Trends that are evident. Okay, now the entire project property position hasn't been soiled, just this core area, but you can see right away that there's these trends. Why that is, it's interesting. There's a lot more going on in geology, in the underlying geology to generate these trends. But I'm going to point out one thing in particular. Go to the next slide. This area right around Lookout Mountain, where there was an old pit, a small historic pit, produced maybe 18,000 ounces. Very robust soil anomaly. But then off to the east at Oswego Trend, you also see a blowout gold anomaly. And it almost looks like the two are starting to link. And I think this is a really important feature, this apparent cross trend between the two areas. I think this is an absolutely critical underlying, it's telling us something. It's telling us that there's a bigger system present here. Okay, so this cross trend, even though it's a bit subtle, we've picked up on it, and I think that this is going to lead us to discovery. All right, go to the next slide. Now we're looking down the axis of that slide. So we're looking southwestward on the right-hand side of this image. You can see the Lookout Trend. I've kind of put an arrow there to give you a sense of the strike of the Lookout Trend. There is a little pit up there on top of the hill. That's the old historic mine. They just nibbled away at a little bit of rock that was sticking out, and they processed. This is going way back, probably 30 years or so. It's ancient history, quite frankly, and that I love that. In Nevada, when I see a little district where there's a lot of little, pits and nibblies that people have done over the time, and they haven't really put everything together, it's fantastic. It's like having a few jigsaw puzzle pieces, and knowing there's a whole puzzle to be found. All right, so right now they are RC drilling, and they're also diamond drilling. So I put little circles on there. You can see where they're drilling, and curiously, it's straight down dip, straight down the hill from that pit. Well, I'll talk about why. Now, the second trend to the east, the Oswego Trend, is actually just off the image to the left, but there's an occurrence at Oswego. It's very interesting. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But in short, what we're doing is we're looking in that gold corridor that links the Lookout Trend with the Oswego Trend. So we're looking southward, kind of at a profile. So let's go to the next slide. So what I've done here is I've taken some geophysical data that they have, and I've actually plastered it straight onto this photograph. Okay, so I took their what we call IP. It's an electrical technique, and the IP recognizes electrical conductivity of the rocks in the subsurface. Now, you can notice right away that down there, kind of at the bottom, right underneath the word IP section, there's an area that's lighting up in green, and you can't quite see it, but it's oranges and yellows and stuff. There's something conductive down there. Interesting. Now, notice there's also two holes in this particular cross-section. I've circled with pink. There were two high-grade hits that were drilled by Timberline a few years ago. This is an area they call the Water Well Project, okay? This is down dip. It's also fault offset. In other words, the little resource they have right now, which is 600,000 ounces and change, there seems to be a step as you go to the left from that. You drop down, boom, there's some high grade hiding out. That's very interesting. Maybe that's trying to tell us something. All right, so this gives you, it kind of sets the stage. Now the two white lines are meant to be just faults. In other words, you have one fault that's dipping eastward on the right-hand side, and you got one that's dipping westward on the left-hand side. And these faults define what we call a graben. It's like a down drop block where all the rock has shifted down. And it's in this graben that maybe there's a prize hiding here. Okay, so and to put it in scale, I put a scale bar there, a kilometer scale across this graben. That's a pretty good target. Okay, that's something where you could host some tons. All right, so let's go to the next slide. Now, here's one of the stigmas about Timberline. You know, a lot of people who've seen the story or know the story from years gone by, they know there's a resource there. If you look at the numbers here, the NI 43-101 resource, it's got measured, indicated, and inferred. It's on the low grade side. Okay, we're talking, you know, half gram to gram type grades. So people's perception around this project, it's a big puffy low grade deposit. You know, it's okay. It's a good starter, but it's not, you know, what you really need. You want something with some meat on it as far as grade. And I've talked about this before, like at Cabral, you know, they shifted from thinking about low grade. Now they're focused on the high grade. Same things happen in here at Timberline. Okay. Look, the table on the right-hand side is what I want people to focus on. All right. They have a series of drill holes, including those holes around this water well area, that have hit high grades and significant intervals. You know, you got, for instance, 19.8 meters at nearly 12 grams up at the top there. You know, scroll down, you got 28 meters at 7.4 grams. You've got 22.9 meters at 9.7 grams. You know, go down to the bottom, you got 12.2 meters, 4.9 grams. Okay, these are good grades. Now that's high grade, and high grade is what makes gold mining profitable. Okay, what do we know about this? Well, this information, this high grade, is actually hiding inside of that low grade resource. You know, when they model a resource, and you know, oftentimes the high grade gets lost if your focus is to model a big low grade open pit. You tend to lose sight of the high grade, but geologically it's very important. And what the company is doing right now is shifting their thinking from, you know, this being they're not losing sight that they do have a near surface, you know, open pitable deposit. That's still there. Okay, but they're focused on this high grade component within it. And we're going to look at what's happening as you go down into that graben, because if we find something down in that graben, maybe you have a buried, you know, blind high grade system. Look, guys, the easy stuff is gone. Okay, you got to get creative. And what we're doing here at Timberline is just that. We're using that geophysics and this information about the high grade. We're thinking, maybe there's a high grade system that's hiding in plain sight. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, so I've taken that same image I showed you a minute ago, and I've annotated it with a few things here. Firstly, I've put on the drills. That yellow hole, that RC drill, and the diamond drill, those holes have recently been drilled. Okay, I was out there a couple of days ago. Yes, I've been sitting here in Colorado for too many months at this point. But, you know, they started drilling, and quite frankly, I was quite excited about the reports of what they were seeing. I wanted to go have a look. So I hopped in the car, drove out, spent a day and a half here, got to look at the RC hole, got to look at the diamond hole. Very interesting. Some interesting geology poking up. Okay, but they have more holes they're going to drill. Like I put on here some green lines to indicate, you know, in general terms, what the target is. You know, stepping out into that graben and drilling some holes down to try to find that high grade layer. And the geometry of the high grade target is like you see in the orange. Okay, that orange circle is basically the orientation of the high grade system. Okay, so that's an interesting target. So we've got enough holes here to start to get a flavor for what we're seeing. That RC hole in particular, that happens to be a bit north of the two previous holes that are shown with the pink circles around them. So it's a little bit in and out of the section. But, you know, that RC hole, I think, gives a very good first test of confirmation of that water well area and the potential there. And I think, you know, it looks interesting. Okay, you know, these things aren't, you know, visually it's not a slam dunk to identify ore in Carlin systems, as most people know. But boy, that hole looked interesting, and the diamond hole looked very interesting as well. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Now I'm going to add a little bit more flavor. Oswego. Okay, I told you there's something interesting over there. Look, historic sample of 86 meters is a channel sample along a bed, one of these beds of shaly rock, and at 86 meters, 12.4 gram. Okay, that doesn't happen every day. That's a whopper. Now, granted, they probably sampled down the strike of that bed, so you got to, what's the real thickness of it? Well, it's thinner than that, but the point is, there's historic high grade samples known at Oswego of significance. All right, that's interesting because that means that on the other side of the graben, on the east side of the graben, this gold is popping out again. So you have gold popping out on, on the both sides. You got gold popping out at Lookout resource area, and then you got gold popping out at Oswego. Well, what I've done here is I've drawn a series of faults, the stair step on either side, which is typical in Nevada. Like you see repetitive faulting like this, and it simply depress the rock down into the subsurface. So that layer is forming basically an inverted rainbow shape, and it probably goes down into the ground and pops back up again at Oswego. Now we're talking target. Okay, that's 1.5 kilometers across, from area to area. The soils in this area tell us there's a robust gold system here. Yes, it's going to be buried, a lot of it, but with those kind of grades, who cares? That works. All right. So let's go to the next slide. Like I said, geologists on site, fantastic. These are well-seasoned guys. Both Steve and Mark and the rest of their team, very good, capable people to manage the program. They model the data as it comes in every day. Here you can see the historic drilling as well as some of the newer drilling. That yellow and blue hole actually happens to be the core hole, which is in progress and going down to the target horizon. But what we see developing very quickly is good continuity of that inverted rainbow that I talked about. Okay, so this is the Lookout resource would be on the right-hand side near the top of those drill holes, and then what they're seeing is the bed, the favorable shaly rock, is dipping down into the ground, and guess what? Every hole seems to pick it up, and by gummy, if the rest of these holes that we drill out there continue to see this layer, then this could amount to a very, very important discovery. All right, go to the next slide, please. So what does a rock look like? Look, road gravel. I mean, that's about the size of it. Okay, this is kind of a muddy limestone, and what's happened here as the fluids that deposit the gold come into this rock, they actually leach out the calcite. All right, so the calcite goes away. Anybody that's taken Geo 101, if you take a bottle of vinegar and you put a drop on a piece of limestone, it fizzes. Okay, so one of the techniques that we use to kind of understand, well, maybe is this rock altered, is that if you put little drops of vinegar on the rock and you don't see any fizz, that means the calcite's, it's gone away. That's a good thing. That means probably that fluids have attacked the rock and leached the calcite out. Okay, so these are examples of core on the left and RC cutting. So the difference between core and RC is that with core, the bit is a hollow cylinder, and as it goes down, it cuts a tube of rock, and you can actually get, like chunks or sticks of rock coming out of the ground. You slice that, you take your sample, but then you're left with material like you see on the left there. Okay, we see dark gray, what we call decalcified, the calcite's been removed, limestone, and then there's little bits of yellow and red. Those yellow and red minerals are very important. The yellow stuff is called orpiment. It's an arsenic sulfide, and the red stuff you can see on the second rung of core there, that red is called realgar. It's also an arsenic sulfide, but very bright reds and yellows and very distinct. Like when you see that, you get excited. Okay, so that's what the core looks like. If you go over to the RC cuttings, you can see it's the same thing. It's dark gray rock. Again, you put acid on it, no fizz, so it means it's decalcified. But look at the chips in there. You see little bits of yellow and red. So this is the kind of thing that you would see in your product. Now, I'm not saying these. Look, these are the older holes at Waterwell, but what I'm, so this is not, I'm not disclosing something that's not already out there. Okay, what I'm trying to show people is that as a geologist, that's what we look for. Okay, that's that, and when you see that, when you see a decalcified muddy limestone and you see little bits of realgar or orpiment, maybe some other things, you get kind of excited. Okay, so as they drill the holes there in this smiley pit. Yes,
Sorry to interrupt. Is that is that the same type of signature that that the other Carlin deposits have?
very much so. Yes.
Okay.
All these Carlin deposits have very high levels of arsenic, antimony, oftentimes mercury, and some other elements. Okay, so they're what we call pathfinder elements. The arsenic often leads you into finding a gold deposit. That's why they call them pathfinder elements. But in this case, at Windfall at this particular area, lookout in the Windfall area, there's a very good correlation between what you see in terms of orpiment and realgar and grade. Okay, the material we're looking at there probably grades 5, 10, 15 gram per ton, in that range. So when you see this as a geologist, you would get excited, especially in this camp, this area, this district. Okay, so this is what we're looking for, and we hope to see in these holes that we're drilling. So what can I tell people? Well, look, I would say that over the next few months, as we drill the holes and get some assays, you might see intervals, much like I showed you in a few slides back, some nice, thick, robust layers of high grade within this system. And I'm very confident that there is a big, nice layered system. Very typical Carlin, by the way. Very typical Carlin. These things are bedded. The fluids follow those beds, so they tend to take the shape of the bed itself. All right, go to the next slide. Okay, this is a slide. I'm standing on that big, tall mountain, lookout mountain, and below me is the pit. Okay, so that's the pit, but we're looking straight over to Oswego. Oswego is that area where you see some roads crisscrossing the hill in the background. That road cut that was sampled, the 86 meters of 12 gram and a bit, that's over on that hill. So we're looking down the fairway, so to speak, at Oswego. That's a distance of about 1.5 kilometers. The little pit where they mined I think 20,000 ounces, somewhere in that range, is right below, below where I'm standing. By the way, that high grade pokes its nose up in there. Inside that big cloud of lower grade stuff, there is a high grade layer in there. So some of those high grade hits we have come from here. What's really interesting is I think that there's probably potential for, say, finding a couple 100,000 ounces of high grade that's sitting literally right underneath this pit. Okay, so it would be potentially be open pittable. It's an open pittable target. That's a wonderful start. But what's really key here is that bed's going to go down into the ground. We're kind of looking down the axis of the target here, so it'll go down into the ground, and then I think it goes all the way under and it pops up again at Oswego. That's a huge target. Now, this is where I've got to tell people how I think about scale. Like, I don't know if it's there. I can't guarantee anything, but we're going to try our best to find it. Okay, but here's how I think about targets. Okay, for people, look, a hectare is a measurement of areas, like surface areas. It's kind of like an acre, but it's not. Okay, a hectare is 100 meters by 100 meters. So imagine a square in your head, 100 meters by 100 meters. Okay, now in this case, because we have a bed and we know, okay, it's a few tens of meters thick, you can actually start to think about how many hectares you have in front of you. Look, if we have something that's 1,500 meters long and say maybe 300-400 meters wide, we're looking at quite a few hectares here. We're looking at 40, 50, 60 hectares of target area. Wow. Okay, now if you have a layered system here, you can imagine, let's say the layer is 20 meters thick on average or something like this, just hypothetically. All right, that means there could be 500,000 tons per hectare in a target area. Like now look, geology, I would love to say that slam dunk, yeah, it's, you can predict things like that. You can't. So I always have a discount factor I use in my head. I use say a 30 or 50% discount factor. So what I mean by that is, let's do a little math. Let's say that we have 50 hectares of target area here, okay? And let's discount it 50%. So now we have 25 hectares that are potentially, underlain by this mineralized layer, okay? And let's say maybe we get lucky and we find 500,000 tons per hectare, okay, like little cube, squares out there. Well, okay, that's like a 10, 12 million ounce or ton, 10, 12 million ton system. Okay, now look, go back. Now all you have to do is go back. The density I used, by the way, for this is about 2.5 tons per cubic meter. If you go back to the table and you start looking at the grades that we see in those high grade intervals, we're looking at 5, 6 to maybe 10 grams per per ton on those high grade intervals. Well, that's pretty interesting because all of a sudden you might have 10, 12 million tons at say 0.3 ounce. That's pretty good. Like this is definitely it's definitely plus 2 million ton target. We have to drill it to figure it out. But the point is, that's what I like to see. I like to be able to see a target in front of me, just like you can see in this image, that clearly demonstrates, multi-million ounce potential. That's why I get excited about this place here. Is it's just so easy to see the darn thing, and imagine this layer going down and coming back up again. So that's how I think. Is it there? No, can't guarantee it. But drilling should help us determine if this thing has that kind of potential. All right. So this is the big prize. Okay, go to the next slide. Okay, now we're going to talk about Windfall. Windfall's the easternmost trend of these three trends. We're going to go up to that blue circle there. And there was historic mining here as well. So let's go to the next slide, please. Here on the left-hand side, you can see a geologic map of that area. And there's 3 red pits. You got Peroni, Windfall, and then Rustler. And I think combined, these things have produced a little over 100,000 ounces. Again, just little cat scratch pits. I mean, these are, in respect to most Carlin systems, these are little babies. But these were mined way back in time, probably in the 1970s. Okay, I mean, like, wow, this is ancient history kind of stuff. Nonetheless, they made money. If you think about the gold price back then, the price wasn't near what it is. So, for them to make money on these deposits at that time is rather remarkable. The more important thing is notice that those pits follow along a certain bed, and I'm pretty darn sure that's the same bed you see clear over 2 trends over to the Windfall Trend. In other words, to me, you have a system here that's controlled by the same bed again. Okay, wow, they've only scratched the surface. That bed's going to do all sorts of things. It'll go down in the ground and come back up, but pop up, and where we might have other targets like the one I just described for Lookout Oswego. Okay, so here you can see some historic drill holes. There's some good intercepts, 20, 30 meter intercepts of a pretty decent grade in and around these pits. So we know already there's a lot of low-hanging fruit here. The guys will start targeting this area after they do a bit more work. Go to the next slide, please. This simply shows you one of those little pits. It's little. I mean, it's little in terms of what I think of as a mine. Okay, but they did move a few million tons here. Okay, so this slot-like pit is, we're looking straight down the axis of that bed. Notice that you go off to the hill in the distance, and you can see some dumps up there. That's the next pit to the north, the Peroni pit. So we're looking at the Windfall pit, Peroni pit, but that bed is like, boom, straight as an arrow. Okay, well, what's this bed doing? Okay, I showed you what's happening at Lookout Oswego. I think we have another another potential target here that needs to be a little work needs to be done to develop the target. I'd like to see some geophysics and stuff done here, but the property is just laden with targets like this. So with that, I'll cut it off. You can now see what the prize is. Timberline is very focused now on this Eureka asset. It's not to say they don't have some other good assets. I really like the Seven Troughs asset as well, but this one is the flagship. It's the main focus for the company, and quite frankly, the drilling that's being done there right now, this test of this Graben feature could really catalyze the company, like show a huge amount of value for the company and the shareholders. So I'll let you ask any questions you might have.
You're on mute, Tavi.
Yeah, Quinton, let me ask you a question. I know you touched on this, but just wanted you to break down to not just for myself, but for everyone. Perhaps break down a little bit where would you target the next exploration budget on a percentage basis by those parts of the property that you laid out, Oswego, Windfall, or Lookout Mountain? How would you, percentage-wise, how would you separate your focus into those?
I have a golden rule, and I've talked to you guys many times about it, but it's the 80-20 rule. you know, when you have a system like this, you're going to spend 80% of your budget on the main prize, you know, the bird in hand, so to speak, and then you'll spend 20% of your budget on the new targets. You know, developing your next series of a pipeline of targets. Now that can change, obviously, you know, depending on drill success. Maybe you ramp up things over at Lookout in Oswego, but you always want to have something going on your other targets because you don't want to leave them hanging. Look, that's a very dangerous trap that a lot of companies fall in. Is they get so fixated on one thing that they forget, you know, they forget they don't see the forest for the trees, right?
Yeah.
And I don't like to see that. I always like to see advancements. So look, we did talk about geophysics, for example. We're doing CSAMT. Scheduling for CSAMT is a bit right now because of stuff, you know. But we'll get that work done. That's going to be key to helping us open up some of these other targets.
Got it. Someone asked a little bit about their balance sheet. Do you have those numbers in front of you by chance, or just if you know it?
I know just from the discussion I've had with the guys when I was out at site, I think they're around 2.6 or 8 million, something like that, US, by the way, in the bank. This program is going to go on for another few weeks. By the way, the focus of the program is twofold. They are trying to expand that near source resource. So I expect that thing to grow, but it's also to test this Graben target. Okay. I would expect they'll chew through, probably around 2 million of that between now and the end of the year. You know, they're going at it pretty heavily right now. That said, if they get some excitement from some of these drill holes, I think that the stock could do quite well. And obviously they're going to have to raise more money, but I think there's a very good story to be had. This is certainly one where we as Crescat can make sure they stay focused, but also have the backing they need to continue their work.
Yeah, the money that we put into this deal helped them to clean up their balance sheet and give them the cash that they have today. So
that's right.
We were a key part of getting them the exploration dollars to for this new target area that Quinton's so excited about, and they have permits. They're drilling right now. There'll be assays coming back here pretty soon, and it's an exciting, really exciting story. We have so exciting that we have 4 other investments in Nevada, at Crescat that we are going after these Carlin style deposits because Quinton believes there's a lot more of them out there. He was involved with some of these when he was at Newmont, when he was at Evolving Gold, and Quinton, is there any updates that you can give us on some of the other? Like we've done a presentation on New Legacy already, for instance. Perhaps any update you can give us on that one?
Or maybe talk a little bit about the differences between the 2 projects. I think would be interesting.
Yeah.
Look, okay, let's jump into New Legacy. Look, they got their permit a couple of weeks ago. They announced that. They've been building roads and drill pads for their planned drill program. Last I was told, their drills should show up here within a week or so. And by the way, I think one of the drills we're using at Eureka might be kind of holding them back a bit. But anyway, look, they're going to get going here very quickly. I've gone over the drill plan with their crew. I think I talked about this last time, but Charles Weekly, of course, modeled the subsurface geology very well. I think they have very well defined targets. What is New Legacy compared to Eureka? This story, it's actually very similar. If you look at the targeting that's been done here, the rift anticline target, which is once again a buried target, is simply the extensions of a layered system in the subsurface. So geologically, look, this is a repetitive picture in Nevada. You now have to start chasing these beds of rock down into blind areas and starting to drill these things systematically to find the next generation. So New Legacy is basically chasing a very similar target to what I just described. Now it's a little bit different host rock. It's higher in the section. It's up in the Devonian. And the Devonian up in that country, hosts a lot of, as we talked about, plus 10 million ounce systems in that Cortez region there. Does that put it above this or either? No. I think the Eureka camp here, like I said, this is way underdone. It's like nobody's explored here for decades, quite frankly. There was a little bit of work, but nothing systematic in my view. So look, both of them have huge potential. We have smaller investments, as you know, and I'll be able to talk about those individually as well.
Coming up.
Yeah, coming up. And I think we're going to have some other updates on prior stories too, right? Going forward, at least in one of the videos.
Yeah, lots to talk about. We have a lot of companies that are drilling. That's the strategy here, is that we get money in people's hands. They then go and drill. We have a number of companies that have finished, just recently finished their drill programs or are still drilling right now. The one challenge of the mining industry at the moment is the assay turnaround. I'll tell you, the labs, because the depressed gold prices over the past 7 or 8 years, the lab capacity has dropped way off. Here we are, boom, full on. Everybody's drilling, and these labs simply don't have the bandwidth. But it will get resolved. I think it'll take 6 to 12 months for the labs to kind of ramp up again and catch up. But right now, it's a little bit of a hair-pulling exercise. But we have lots of exciting stuff going on.
Quinton, go ahead.
I was just going to make a comment. I have to say this lab situation certainly is very telling from a cycle perspective of where we are. So I'll let Kevin now comment.
There is one of our investments that had assay results come back recently, and that the company put out a press release. I think it was it probably last week that we could talk about. Can't we, Quinton? Can you give a little update on Newfound Gold?
Yes, Newfound. And look, they did rush those assays. Like that was one of the first holes they drilled. Obviously, I mean, visually, wow. It looked pretty darn good. So they were able to, isolate and cut that section of core, literally deliver it to the lab as quick as possible and get some assays back in. Look, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I think it was like 4.7 meters of 40 something gram, and then 5 point something meters of like 25 gram or something. Very nice intercepts. Here's why: 2 kilometers north of the Keats zone. Keats is where they found that initial high grade. Okay, the 19 meters and 93 grams. There's luck, and then there's geology. Okay, when you start seeing high grade pop up like that, especially early stages in the gold exploration program, you got to pay attention. Statistically, there's a pretty good correlation between initial drill holes in a gold system and its ultimate size. When you can see whopping big assays, that drill hole, I can't remember the exact number, but it's something like 300 or 400 gram meters. When you take the grade and you multiply it by the meter length of the intercept, and already, and they didn't even assay the rest of the hole because the labs are backed up. But look, Newfound, very exciting. They've got a lot of holes going around the Keats zone that will tell us what's going on down there. So
that one could be a honker, huh? Right, Quinton?